We'll see what the numbers are when it all washes out.
So that she wouldn't be allergic to it.
Good morning all.
Good morning.
Well, I hope you're enjoying the donuts. I had to run to the grocery store this morning, so I figured I'd treat you all with some donuts. It's October 13th, if you didn't know, and we're now recording, so everything you say will be on video somewhere on YouTube. So, quick agenda today. Our program is now going to be virtual due to some family matters. So we're hoping that that's going to work out. We'll see how it goes. I just got their slides this morning and I tried to integrate them and it doesn't look great. So I don't know. We'd start the pledge. I'll stand. No standing today, and no one. Someone's chewing, so I'll start us off. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Your main standing will do the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do.
Is it the truth?
Is it the truth?
Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? And will it be fun?
All right, you can be seated. Today we have a Rotary Minute. Andy's going to do that for us. Andy, if you would come up here, people on the internet can see you, and there's a few of them.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, hopefully I won't get the hook because I thought about this for a really long time. And then I was really excited about doing this. And last night I had this dream where I was doing it because I had forgotten to come, and then I was in my jammies, and I was in front of a crowd of people it was a wedding party with all the grown-up girls from my Girl Scout troop. And I just as I was starting to talk to one of those girls, I woke up and I went, oh my gosh, it's 10 to 7. So I don't know how many of you know that Tsuki Minabi just won the Nobel Prize for Physics, but I had the privilege of knowing him fairly well because my husband worked at GFDL, which is the Geophysical Fluid Dynamics Laboratory at Princeton. And we had a dinner with everyone who might be famous, like George Philander, Jerry Mulman, Tsuki Minabi, Kiku, whatever his name is, I can't remember, and a whole bunch of other people. And we were newly married 20-year-olds. Hi! Actually, 30-year-olds. And Tsuki told a very funny story about coming to the United States and living in Georgetown and how he walked into his apartment in Georgetown and was so surprised that his wife had redone the entire place, and it turns out that he was on the wrong street with the wrong key. And so you can know that a Nobel Prize winner also can have some issues, right? And the reason that this isn't relevant is Tsuki was a kamikaze pilot for Japan. And he made the joke about this in the 90s, is that he was a failed kamikaze pilot, obviously, because he was a dead. And he talked about how the United States had brought him to the US and that had welcomed him and had brought him into this program. And now he's a Nobel Prize winner for the United States. And at the time, I thought, wow, that's so amazing that he would have been brought over, because he was brought over very soon after the war. Brought over by the United States and essentially accepted into the United States society. And now I'm going to say why I love Rotary. My favorite experience was we did a thing at Sanchez Elementary where we did a barbecue, and there was a bunch of people there, and the entire school came, and most of the individuals there are Spanish speaking and potentially immigrants or not even documented people. And that was just so nice to see that community and to see how Rotary accepted people. And that the thing that I love about Rotary is that we are an international organization. It is not just America first, but we've had many presidents who have not been American and have done wonderful jobs. We are working around the globe to do all kinds of things. And the thing that I most love about this Rotary Club is that I have met people that I would never have met in my regular world. I have listened to people who I would never have listened to in my regular world. For example, Heidi Ganal, who is on the political spectrum, different from me, but I loved listening to her and getting to know her. And it totally changed my thought process about how, what kind of a person she was. And I'm very grateful to Rotary for having done that for me, because it, when I grew up and I went back to my high school reunion, people asked, what was the thing that changed you the most from when we knew you to now? And I said, going to university. And I think Rotary is like a university for me, because I'm learning things, I'm meeting people I didn't know, and I'm changing my opinion sometimes about things in the world because of this experience, and having that opportunity to go out and meet people that I wouldn't necessarily meet. So, man, join our Rotary Club. It is awesome. You will love it. You will feel like a new person. So thank you very much. And I didn't have to do this in my jammies.
Appreciate your time, and that was a very full spectrum story. You go from the pajamas to Rotary being a global organization.
Nobel Prize winner.
Well, yeah. So we do have one guest right now. This is Ann Ginger. So you don't have to introduce yourself, but everyone here has met you so far. So Andy, you met earlier, maybe? Yeah, there you go. Perfect. There we go. So this is like your umpteenth time coming. So we appreciate you coming back, and hopefully we'll be able to get you enrolled through membership soon.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah. Just wanted to re-announce something that we had talked about last week, which is just the youth protection training. So for those who are hoping to get involved in RILA, Rotaract, Interact, or other youth interactions, you'll have to go through the district's training program. Just feel free to email me, and I'll send you the link to the website. And it's not a lot of work. It's just 3 separate things.
Do you have to do that to attend a meeting at Rotaract?
Yes, you're supposed to do that to attend meetings at Rotaract.
So, like, if I wanted to go tonight, I still have to go through this stuff.
You're supposed to go through it, yes. So we can get you
figure it out.
started. It's not a lot of work.
Okay.
It's mostly just going through materials and understanding.
Okay.
The project's an hour.
So, okay.
Yeah, my club in San Francisco, where Alon is from, in that district, you had to go through full background checks and fingerprinting and all of that. And they would bring people like to your meetings and do it all. It's much more intensive than what we have going on right now.
How long's that last? If I remember taking that.
3 years.
3 years?
They told us 3 years, but there definitely is merit to doing it every year, because there are certain things that might be triggers. And I think that that's helpful for people to be reminded of if they're going to be around the youth and other Rotarians, just so that we can make sure we keep everyone safe.
And they do run a background check through this,
Right.
but it's so fast.
But they're not fingerprinting us. They're not.
No.
You're not
I
having to
know
go
that
anywhere.
with the Wow Museum, you can't volunteer unless you go through a background check and fingerprints. Mary Beth, I know you're coming tonight? No, I was gonna go because I want to pitch the conference on world affairs.
She's also got the check to tell them that we gave the road.
Yeah.
But you are going.
I was hoping to.
Oh, so I'll tell them you might be going, to say you are absolutely.
Oh, I don't.
I know, I just want to know.
The
Okay.
last thing.
I'm in touch with you. Okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for that. If you're interested in doing RILA counseling as well this upcoming year, they are going to be in person again next summer. So we need to know that soon so that we can have Bill Hendricks, who's our RILA liaison, make sure that he's got your name down so they can try to get you the trip. It's one of the most beneficial things I've ever done in Rotary. One of the things that I learned and gained most from. We talked last week about how Scott, I see most people have already checked, but I do want to pass around the card. So Katie Goff's husband had passed away, and I have a card, got flowers here just so that you all can see what I'm going to drop off this afternoon or today after the Rotary meeting. So please write your name on the card if you can. Awesome, thank you. So yeah, today is also the Rotaract meeting, which sounds like we'll have a representative at, so awesome. And then again, there's that youth exchange officer training. If you wanted to host a student here, this would be the opportunity to have high school students come and stay with you. Rotary facilitates this through the district, and the training is on the 20th, so it's coming up here.
So how do we get this?
I can send it, I can forward it to you. It came out in the district announcement email, and if you're not getting those, that's totally fine. I can forward it to you. I totally understand not wanting to get those if you don't get them. They're pretty bountiful, but Yeah, but if you already get them, it's in one of those emails in the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks.
Jay, can I make a plug for the Rotaract
Yes, please.
thing? I'll take this off temporarily. But you all got the email, but we have an opportunity to mentor Rotaract students. And it would not be hugely time consuming, it's career mentoring, I should mention that. And I'll send it out again, but it's a list of occupations they're interested in. And so we would love to have a Rotary members volunteer to mentor these students. It would not be a huge time commitment, once or twice, meeting with them, answering questions, sharing your experiences about the profession. It's a great opportunity for us to get connected with them. So please, 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 look at that list. If you've done any work in any way connected with any of those things, sign up with me. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. Yeah,
I
this is
email it to everybody.
definitely one of the nice starting points for a vocational services committee to be able to have an opportunity to work with Rotaract and own the services that we're providing. Well, with that said, we move on to Happy Bucks. I think everyone here is now familiar with Happy Bucks, so I'm going to skip the introduction. We'll start it around this end of the table. It's getting cold. There we go. I'll do one while Bob getting this ready. I climbed up on top of the roof. My house is 3.5 stories tall, and we have a 45-degree slope roof. And I went up and I winterized the swamp cooler on the very, very top of my house. I got down without dying. So there you go. Bob, go ahead.
I went fishing yesterday. It was cold, windy, and I didn't get a bite.
Oh, wow.
One time.
That's why it's called fishing and not fishing.
I know.
Okay. I'm working on opening a restaurant in Lyons, but every single day that's good is 2 steps that are bad. So last night I was there and I started hearing dripping and I'm like, oh my gosh, and there's 2 leaks down in the middle of the kitchen. I'm like, okay, guess what I get to do tomorrow?
What kind of restaurant?
It's gonna be empanadas and breakfast food in the morning, and then we're gonna do sort of dinner theater thing at night, maybe. We haven't quite worked out the dinner thing at night yet, but we're hoping.
Be sure to let us know all the stuff.
Yes, will do.
Or is it?
It's on Main Street, so it's between the pizza restaurant right as you exit Lyons and the pizza restaurant that is right next to us.
And you're serving pizza?
No. I know, we are not doing that.
When Libby finishes her classes this afternoon, we're gonna drive to Oklahoma City to watch the Morgan Horse Show. And I was talking to Mary Beth, and one of her friends is also going to a horse show in Oklahoma City and found out that we know each other. It was the kids, somebody we know from 4-H who coached them in pathology. So that was kind of fun.
Who's a hand weaver?
And she's a hand weaver. I never knew that she had that talent. And also, I don't know if we could dedicate our Happy Bucks toward a donation to Alzheimer's in honor of Hal Scott. Maybe we can use that.
I think that's perfect.
And that would, and we also support Alzheimer's, so.
I have a couple of $50 and a $20. Last week, we went up to see the leaves in Rocky Mountain National Park. We couldn't get in because I didn't know you needed a timed entry. So we did it this week, and Treasurer's Road was closed because of snow. So we went only part way, but the leaves are gorgeous. So I think they're gone now.
The park is open as of today.
Yeah, I know. Well, we didn't know that last week.
Alon had the exact same
It's a
experience.
nice drive.
Alon did the same thing 2 weekends in a row, going there, finding out the reservation, getting there again. And then going. So,
Yeah, yeah.
Just good to see everybody.
Here's a habit, because I'm declaring victory over Washington stuff. Fighting for 3 months, and I finally have the stuff over there.
So they're in the walls now.
Yeah, well,
Well,
outside.
4 cans of fluid, it's right at the bottom of the wall.
Outside.
But I sealed all the entrances and I haven't seen these ones for weeks. They could be eating holes.
I just came back from the mountains and we had our first snowfall. Very nice, you know, being innocent.
It's all swollen like that.
Well, you know, there's, we had rain yesterday, but the snow, yeah, I see the snow, yeah, it's snow.
Any happy dollar because my surgery hasn't been postponed again yet.
I guess I have a few happy dollars. I drove to Des Moines, Iowa and back in the last, after the 4-day weekend to visit my uncle Bob, my last remaining aunt or uncle, he's 89, and my cousin, who I haven't seen many years, with my brother, so it was good family stuff. And then I'm also missing Mariah, who left this week after being home for a while, and she cleaned out the house and repainted several rooms in the hallway, and it's like, I still have boxes to go through. It's been, I'm gonna miss her, yeah, and she turns 30 in a couple of weeks.
I have a happy 5 for the 5 Points Rotary Pub Crawl Poker Hands social we did on Saturday. Quite entertaining. It was 4 hours of Rotary social. From one place to another, you get a drink and you get your card stamped. I ended up with a high flush in hearts and won $50 at the Spangalang Brewery. So all good.
So that's what you put in.
Photos of that, with yourself, of your back.
I can get up for 5 points.
I don't know if they sent any pictures or not. I didn't take any pictures. I never take pictures.
I can get up for 5
Yeah,
points.
yeah.
I know people there.
Great club, very vibrant.
One of Alon and my former club members, we have 3 people from our old club are in that club, and one of them is one that organized the pub crawl. So
Is that Ryan?
no, it was Kate who did the, Kate?
I met a couple of them.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you for the happy bucks all. They're now going into a Meredith's bank bag, so they're safe. Today we have a presentation from Dan Powers. I know that we do have Bill online, but I think that we can hear Bill, so I can let him unmute, and I will get Dan started while Bill does introduction.
And I'm here. I'm hoping you can hear me.
Are you
Yes.
ready?
Yes.
1 sec. Let me get you highlighted here for the participants.
It's like.
Hello,
Hi there.
can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We're ready for you, Bill.
Okay, Dan Powers is the Executive Director of Colorado Labs, a nonprofit consortium of more than 30 federal research labs and joint university institutes, plus their broad ecosystem of technology-oriented companies and economic development organizations. Nurturing an informed evolution of society is his mission. The spectrum of brilliant scientists and technologists in the CO Labs network are a huge national asset. Since joining the labs in 2016, he has brought together thousands of people with an interest in scientific discovery and technology commercialization via lab tours, awards, events, workshops, conference calls, and other relevant gatherings. Dan is a University of Colorado alum. He has 25 years of experience in policy assessment and public engagement for both government agencies and economic development organizations. He lives in Lafayette with his wife, Tara, and their 2 young daughters who call him a science geek. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Well, I apologize for not being able to be there in person. I'm dealing with my wife unfortunately tested positive for COVID earlier this week. Although we're all Pfizer vaccinated, so alas, something's gotten through to her. But knock on wood, my daughters and I, we've tested negative, but the kids are home from school and all that. So I'm gotten very familiar though, as we all have over the last year, of presenting online, and I'm happy to be giving you a quick overview of this lab network, this incredible network of brilliant scientists here in Colorado, and how they are an asset to what we have going on right here in Boulder, as well as throughout the country and indeed the globe. So with the presentation, would you like me to bring that up on my screen, or is that something that is done through your side?
We can do it on our side here.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Jump to the next slide then. I get right into showing a list. I hope if the screen is big enough there, this is meant to give just a quick glance, not that you would need to read each of these dots, but the point to be made here is that we are fortunate in Colorado to have over 30 different federally funded research laboratories and joint research institutes on university campuses, mostly between Fort Collins and Colorado Springs, although there's field research stations throughout different parts of the state. And even the Federal Railroad Administration has a testing facility in Pueblo. All of these different labs are listed on our website. And if you want to go into further detail or just peruse around and get a sense of what these different labs are doing, you can find more detail there. Our website and our organization is meant to be a hub where people can quickly check in and then be directed further into more specific connections to labs, depending on what their interest might be. All right, the next slide there, a little bit of an overview. CoLabs, we got started in 2007. We're a nonprofit, and we have a mission really to connect all of these different labs with each other, so they're aware of what each other is up to and potential partnering opportunities. And then we also tell the story, the ROI, return on investment story, to our elected officials, most particularly our congressional representatives and our senators, about the activity and how the science is manifesting out of labs in Colorado as an asset to the country, so that these labs stay funded and stay here. Our vision really is that we're advancing the competitiveness and helping to build, as you can see, a knowledgeable and connected community around these federally funded labs. I would say that personally, my compelling vision for CoLabs is that we're recognized as the most critical and broadest spectrum of brilliant research in the country, and are therefore an asset to help solve some of our country's biggest challenges, and indeed those of the world. All right, next slide, please. There's and I apologize, I can see some of the coloring has changed when I switched things into apparently into PowerPoint. It might have changed some of the colors, so please don't judge the graphics quality necessarily of the organization. But the labs here, and I'll get back to a little bit of a background with CoLabs starting in 2007, and I'll touch on a bit more of that history. One of the main purposes was to outline to our congressional representatives the financial impact that the labs are having, hence they are deserving of continued funding. So with nearly every 2 years doing an economic impact study and assessing just the activity within the labs, this statistic you see here does not actually represent any kind of ripple effect into how, say, the photonics industry or the bioscience industry in Colorado also add to the state's economy. These are just the activity within the labs themselves. It's nearly $3 billion at this point in terms of an impact to Colorado's economy from the activity within the labs. And that's a puzzle piece that the governors of Colorado have recognized and want to nurture and maintain as part of the fabric of Colorado's economy here. There's nearly 8,000 employees now, many of them working remotely. Others are on site. COVID has really switched up a lot of the protocols and activities within these labs. The bulk of employees are between Boulder County and Jefferson County. Out of these roughly 9,000 employees, 8,000 direct employees, and then all the indirect, think caterers, construction workers, consultants, the people who come in and work with the scientists there. The bulk of them are in Boulder and Jefferson County, but there's actually a presence within over 30 of the counties in Colorado. There's 64, as you probably know. With the master's and PhD level education of these employees, they tend to have higher paying jobs. And when you get down into the more particular niche regional economic development organizations or particular chambers of commerce and city councils and local authorities, their assessment and their awareness of these higher educated, higher paid employees start to become a part of the puzzle that they're working on very locally to nurture and maintain as part of their economic development plans. So that's part of why the labs being here become an important part of even more fine-grained parts of the puzzle for our economic stability here. Next slide. All right, I'm going to describe a few themes that we get out of these various labs across the state. Starting with, of course, the visionary research. We are fortunate to have a range of Nobel Prize winners and, again, a spectrum of labs that is unlike any others in the country. In fact, CoLabs exists because it was recognized back in 2007 that this network of labs, we're fortunate, unlike most other states, covers a broad spectrum from aerospace research to transportation to public health, to energy, to wildlife, and of course, climate and weather and atmospheric systems. We have one of the highest concentrations of climate scientists in the whole country here. Most other states tended to grow the type of laboratory and science focus in particular realms, but over decades, Colorado has actually almost organically grown where additional labs have located here because of the original labs, basically Nist and NOAA's labs under the Department of Commerce located here back in the 1950s. We actually have the highest concentration of federally funded research laboratories, second highest concentration outside of Washington, DC. And so CoLabs works as a bit of an association to nurture this connection. The photos that you see in here, I've pulled out some from the fuel cast system. That's a combination of Department of USDA, Department of Agriculture and the Forest Service, and the Department of the Interior and several universities. They're able to do a real-time using both on the ground and satellite-borne imagery, a quote fuel casting, fuel forecast for potential wildfire danger. And that's just to come about in the last couple of years and has been extremely helpful for helping to locate the kind of equipment necessary to fight wildfires. The COVID research that's going on between the National Institutes of Health funded research at University of Denver Anschutz, at the Infectious Disease Research Center in Colorado Springs, in Fort Collins at the Colorado State University, has been some of the most leading edge research on vaccine development across the country. I know if Beth is on the call, she'll recognize that's Dr. Jun Yi in the bottom right corner. He is a physicist at JILA, has been there for over 20 years and is one of the most globally renowned recognized quantum physicists in the world. I'll touch on some of his, if I have time, particular experiments going on. We also have atmospheric research going on, and I can get into the heliophysics and space weather that is coming from the Laboratory for Atmospheric and Space Physics here on CU Boulder campus. And then that upper left photo, that's actually for lack of a less technical term, the seed vault that's up in Fort Collins. We have a representative genetic sample of over 10% of all the species of plant and some mammals actually up in a particular facility in Fort Collins that, not to be too dramatic, but is meant to help repopulate the plant species supply following an apocalyptic event on the earth. And it's good that there's people paying attention to how we might do that. The tours of all of these labs used to occur before COVID times, but now we're having to do things online this way. All right, next slide. I'll go through a little bit quicker. You get the sense of the topics. These fundamental technologies that come out of the labs, I decided to highlight Jilla because this is a source of quantum mechanics and quantum computing research that's, I think, anyone interested in science generally, if you want to go into a realm of excitement and don't believe what you're hearing that, oh, this is 10, 15 years away and it's interesting, but we have other more important things to do. Check out what Jilla and Nist here in Boulder are doing on quantum computing research. I personally would say, so think if I'm almost taking the collabs hat off and just talking as Dan right now, I've been personally looking into the companies that are located here in Boulder, involved in quantum computing and across the country. And it could inform anything from where you might choose to make some investments or how you would structure your business model to deal with the kind of quantum computing power that could come in relative to what your competitors could be researching if you're not aware of this, down to what could be additional job opportunities and indeed the type of jobs that will be available in the next decade if you're presuming to be working 10 years from now, or if you have children or grandchildren who are looking to understand what kind of work will be available. Check into the realm of quantum computing and all of the adjacent types of technologies that will be built upon that core hub of technology. It is going to be a powerful change for our society. All right, next slide there. Across these labs, they are, as I was just alluding to, helping to train some of the most brilliant next generation scientists across a range of technologies. I have a picture there of some of the labs up in Fort Collins from the Centers for Disease Control and, as I mentioned before, the Infectious Disease Research Center. If people want to be involved in public health, there are incredible world-leading researchers who they can be learning from and develop a path into everything from public health to the reference that you see there with LASP. That's a mission control where the students in there are controlling satellites that are out in space that have been launched. First, they were designed and built at LASP here in Boulder. They're launched by other parties, and now they're helping to control them once they're in the atmosphere. And the bottom center picture is Dr. Callie Higgins. She's with Nist, and she's involved in advanced manufacturing and is one of the leading experts in the country on that kind of technology. And as a mentor actually to the, I guess I'll call them the kids, the graduate students a little bit younger than her. That's definitely one of the benefits and something we could take pride in here in Colorado as to the workforce that we are helping to develop. Hopefully some of them will stay here, but in other ways they will go to where they're needed most around the world, and we can be the hub that they came from. All right, next slide there. Risk assessment. The research coming from labs, I think, as I've touched on with wildfires and atmospheric change with climate change as concerns. And then there's public health. This is a major realm of activity, and I could get into that and will prompt you if you have questions. But I think with climate change and public health, think of those as two areas where there's a vast amount of knowledge and modeling and experts who can speak to given challenges, both to civic groups, to local leaders who might be trying to understand what are the threats that they need to be preparing for, all the way up to, of course, speaking to Congress at hearings and describing here's what the latest science is on these different topics. Hence, this should inform the kind of legislation and funding for mitigation efforts. Next slide. All right, and then technology transfer. This is part of where the real economic impact from these labs comes to both Colorado and to the country. The references there are just from a few different reports, but I wanted to give an example of the spectrum. There's both the U.S. Department of Agriculture's National Wildlife Research Center is in Fort Collins. They partner with companies that are helping to find ways to increase or reduce diseases amongst wild animals that could get into are domesticated animals who are part of the food system, or they deal with helping companies who address wildlife impacts on all sorts of human-made construction, whether that's buildings or electrical infrastructure or even vehicles. Now we get into the realm of things like energy systems with wind turbines and the issues with birds. There's a whole realm of how they research the interaction between wildlife and human systems, and then help to transfer some of that knowledge and technology into the what become companies to help address those problems more directly. I have a reference there to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory and the science coming out of there, from a hydrogen tech to, of course, increased efficiency within solar panels. And there's the whole realm of biofuels and, of course, wind technology. The intention of NREL in particular is that all of its science is meant to be commercialized. And the partnering that they do, over 600, probably more than 800 this year, partners from small individual entrepreneurs to the massive companies like Toyota or Xcel Energy. They are partnering with them to help manifest their technology there. I do have a reference at the top right there is we've done webinars with Innosphere, which is an incubator for entrepreneurs, describing how, in this case, we did a webinar focused for scientists in labs to help understand how they can commercialize their technology. And the bottom reference there regarding Nist, Nist is one of the best examples, one of the most successful entities, I'd say, from the federal government doing prize challenges. They will have often a $250,000 up to a few $1 million worth of prize money, where they put out a problem that they're looking for technologists to solve. And in the iteration of several phases of a prize challenge, they will then end up both awarding them what a top performer can get into. They'll award top performers not only for their project, but then that typically is intended to lead into further partnership to manifest some technology. And an example from Nist in particular are using drones to help create wireless and remote topography communication systems. Think of being able to provide firefighters, wildland firefighters, communication capability and other types of visual access to the land they're in, when they otherwise would not be able to get any kind of cell service. This is both a way to help save lives and also help with their ability to fight a fire more quickly with real-time information. And the drone technology to help with that activity is really on the forefront, and Nist is helping to advance that. All right, next slide here. Some of these intangible benefits I wanted to bring up. We've heard from the scientists and actually others in the community that they want to be sure others realize, beyond the specific technologies that might be getting researched here, that the companies coming out that then hire people, contribute to the local economy in terms of jobs, and also the equipment leases. Think of the ripple effect again, that when you have a business that's spun out of a lab, then there are additional companies within the community that serve those employees in vast different numbers of ways. The expertise is something that I've seen lend itself to both very specific and paid for type of situations, where you have a scientist who can actually help consult on something outside of their regular work. But often, most often, that ends up being in a volunteer capacity. It's someone who's able to come and speak to Boulder City Council or to the county commissioners or the state legislature on the science and the awareness of given research that they have that can help inform some better decisions and be part of a more thoughtful communication around what are very often difficult challenges. Next slide, there's a few more references to some of these intangible benefits. As I mentioned, the volunteering, going to classes, that's all been online now. We've figured out ways to do this more by Zoom, but having these scientists as a resource to go to classrooms and to volunteer and bring their perspective is an intangible that, when I've traveled to other parts of the country, you might not know if you grew up in Boulder or if you came here because of a technology-oriented type of career. What we have here is actually not that common, and it adds to the DNA and the overall atmosphere of conversation in a way that is powerful and awesome. And I'd like to think, if not replicable, at least something that others could tap into. We have to be careful not to be too prideful and understand that, of course, there's other brilliant nodes and people throughout the rest of the country. Boulder isn't the center of the universe, although sometimes we, I think I like to think that we're pretty close. And these labs are a good reason to maybe have that sense, but no, it's a tricky balance where, yes, I want to be proud and help connect these scientists with other other conversations where they can be helpful, but also recognize, with a little bit of humility there. The last point I think I'm trying to segue to, the bullet point there, is that this spirit of exploration that we have, it adds in ways almost untangible to the sense of possibility and opportunity within the community. And I've seen it now, it really throughout Colorado. If you get into realms of public health over the last couple of years with COVID, or around the energy realms and trying to address climate change through pollution reduction via renewable energy technologies, the notion that people have that this is all possible. Here's what we know is going on in labs. It should inform both expectations and visions of, if not regulations, to achieve certain goals within society here. That is empowering. And that's probably one of the least, least physical, least economic, but most powerful impacts of this network of labs that we have here in Colorado. All right, and I'm looking at the time here. So next slide, I'm going to just have 2 more slides. This is a reference, perhaps if it's on a big screen in your in-person meeting, you could read this, but the point is this is a reference from Governor Jared Polis complimenting the winners of our annual Governor's Awards event. We have not done the Governor's Awards for the last 2 years, counting this year because of COVID. We couldn't gather in person. But for the 10 years prior, collabs would solicit submissions from the lab network here, and a group would vet them and choose 4 or 5 for recognition. The actual title got started back under Governor Bill Ritter, is the Governor's Awards for High Impact Research. And across this spectrum of labs, we look to recognize the value of their research coming out and, as the name implies, having a direct impact somewhere on society. I could describe a few examples if we get into conversation about those. All right, and then the last slide, I wanted to bring this up as we have gone all online. Our organization spent 3/4 of my time was spent on site with lab tours, both large and small gatherings, showing people what is happening inside a given entity, literally being able to lean over the shoulder and see what different scientists were doing. We've had to go all online, but we've found ways to make that work. And particularly the convenience, though, a silver lining of COVID is the convenience of being able to get that top left picture there is with Representative Ed Perlmutter and a couple of different lab directors. Some of you might recognize Marla Dowell as the director of the Nist campus, the Communications Technology Laboratory. And then there's also Dr. Martin Keller, the director of Nist, is there, and the director of the Wind Technology Research Center. But being able to meet with our elected officials, they don't have to travel. And we truly can just say, do you have a 30-minute window? Let's all get on the call here. Our small conversation, as you can see, with Representative Perlmutter, and then there was a smaller conversation with Representative Neguse. This was talking about wildfire research. And then the smaller box that you see at the bottom where we had more like 40 people, that was also with Representative Neguse, where he was giving an update on congressional funding status just a couple of weeks ago for the labs. But we could quickly gather a few dozen of the lab directors all at once. This online gathering has actually been something that I've found quite valuable. It will not go away. The hybrid notion of gathering and using technology to actually get together more often is, I think, one of the better parts of what we've gotten out of the COVID experience. And with that, I think go to the next slide. I'll finalize with just some contact information. This network of labs here, though we're proud of the labs in Colorado, want them to all stay here and grow here, but we recognize they are a national asset and their science deserves to be brought out into conversations throughout the country. And one of the ways that Collabs works as a resource to our lab partners is we vet communications from media companies, newspaper, other communities also asking what kind of research for example, they know you have the National Center for Atmospheric Research and NOAA there, and we've heard Colorado is doing a lot on climate change research. Here's our situation. Who can we talk to? And we ricochet them to the right scientist and help manifest that science out into the world. So with that, thanks for listening. With all that 10,000 foot level info that might prompt all sorts of questions. So take that final point as the real takeaway. If there's a given type of science that you're interested in, or just a question about what they're doing in a certain building that you've driven by here in town, ask me. I'm happy to take your call and get on either a web call with you or just a regular phone call and help make the right connections for you. Thanks.
Well, we have some time, so if people have questions for Dan, since Dan's online, we can start with online people. If there's anyone that wants to unmute and ask some questions. It always takes a second to unmute, we know.
Yes.
We'll give you that second right here. All right, George, I see you unmuted, so you go ahead and shoot.
I just want to tell you how much I appreciated your presentation, because I was unaware of what your group did, and I was unaware of your existence, and I was unaware of the importance of all of the stuff you did. So thank you.
Welcome. Thanks. Thank you then to the Boulder Flatirons Rotary Club for giving me the exposure. We are many times the labs are just under the radar for the average citizen.
Well, one thing I want to do in the room before we ask questions is a show of hands online in the room. How many people work for or at or have worked at one of the facilities you mentioned? So I think that there's 3 in the room here physically. I think Beth obviously works at Gila. I don't know if anyone else online. I see one hand raised there. So you got 4 people in our club that work at one of those facilities or have worked there. Super exciting.
All right.
So Dan, I want to ask you as a question for me is why aren't you in my labs? I mean, I run the USGS labs at CU Boulder, and I have no connection with collabs. What's up with that, right?
Oh, okay. So I have a general and a specific answer. So generally, I know I didn't describe Beck too much of the genesis of collabs. We were started in 2007 when there was a concern that a couple labs may leave Boulder, be relocated, born of senatorial budget horse trading conversations. And when the labs and CU Boulder and the governor's office got wind of these conversations, they thought, well, who thinks this is a good idea? What they want to move Nist out of Boulder? What? So they realized, obviously, we, as the state of Colorado, don't have enough of a rapport with our then current senatorial representatives such that they would squash that conversation immediately. We need to inform them as to why these labs are important. And so very quickly, these different groups that I had mentioned, the labs themselves, research universities, the Boulder Chamber of Commerce is actually the founding member, one of the founding members of collabs. Then Governor Bill Ritter and his Office of Economic Development came together, quickly hired the Leeds Business School at CU Boulder to do an economic impact study. And in that first year, so in 2009, got out a report showing there were about 12, I think actually 14 labs, federal labs in Colorado, and about a $1.5 billion impact. That came out, we got that into the hands of the senators and otherwise other conversations coalescing this whole network ecosystem of federal research labs. Got that concern sort of put to bed, and there isn't a concern right now of labs leaving Colorado. But out of that study, then other labs came forward and said, hey, how come we weren't in this study? We're here, we're doing this in Denver, we're doing this in Fort Collins. And goes somewhat to the stereotype of federal agency siloing and one hand not knowing what the other hand's doing. And the fact that even in Colorado, when the conversation got started and people were saying, yeah, well, let's make sure you talk to them and get their info in this report and talk to them, there were still many others who weren't in the room. And I'd say that's continued to be the case up until just this past spring. Part of my work, I've been with Collabs for about 5 years. Part of my work has been asking around and making sure, are there other federal labs, federally funded labs here in Colorado that should be part of our network? And the one this past spring, we didn't know before. The Veterans Administration has a medical research laboratory in Denver that, particular to COVID impacts on veterans, they have been doing work that's now, we've connected with them and have brought them into some communications, mostly so that they should be aware of this whole broader ecosystem. How can we hyelp you? USGS, though, for your lab, USGS is the most Hydra structured federal agency that I've ever interacted with. Figuring out who answers to who and what thread goes to where. There are several USGS contacts and people that are part of our communications, but I regret that you might not be. But now, born of this meeting today, this is often how the fabric continues to strengthen, and I'm happy to make a connection with you after this to ensure that you're part of our communications. And indeed, when I learn of a new lab, whatever realm of research you're focused on, one of the first things I look to do is say, when was the last time you had a meeting with, say, Senator Hickenlooper's staff? Does he know and his staff know what you're doing and how you're a resource here, one in Colorado, but more so to national issues that they might be interested in? So we'll take that conversation offline, but I'd be happy to follow up with you and find out and let you know who else in USGS I'm already working with.
Awesome. Wonderful. Any other questions in the room? Bob?
You didn't mention a speakers bureau, did you?
Not for a collab specifically, but many of the labs themselves around a given topic will have a segmented speakers bureau. I'm thinking very particularly, as an example, the National Center for Atmospheric Research has a speakers bureau, about 6 or 7 scientists who can discuss wildfire modeling and climate change modeling. So that would be something that I'm aware of, a given, say, node of speakers on a given topic. And if you reach me, I can point you to the right research lab to get into the conversations with people.
Well, education of the public is one of your mission statements. There are many, I don't know how many, service clubs in the state of Colorado who each have a person designated as program chairman. And that's a very challenging job sometimes. Our guy does a wonderful job, as exampled by this presentation. But it would seem to me that would be a marketing channel for any or all of your organizations to identify.
That's a good point. And I have been contacted. I've spoken to many Rotaries and Kiwanis and smaller chambers giving these type of presentations. Often, as you can see, I kept it at a kind of a higher level and didn't get too specific in the technology. I tend to be more of the vector. Now that you know of me and that network of labs, I can hopefully connect you with someone a bit more interesting with some real focused research to describe, which I'm happy to do actually as you're filling in your specific Rotary Club's agenda. There's an infinite number, in essence, of scientists here who we could help connect you with.
I would suggest that you could reach out rather than having the clubs reach out, because you're better organized.
Well, we'll work on that, Dan. I think that we have some network for you that if you need to tap into, you can do that.
Sure. Point taken. I miss being at these kind of meetings in person.
Oh, yeah.
That's when
Nothing
I
like
got
being grilled in person.
when I got started with collabs, and they so part of the the interviewing of what would you what would you see yourself doing? Like, well, I'd be going out to these different groups and speaking to them, letting them know about you, and who does that now? And they're like, well, just not to be too stereotypical, but imagine a group of scientists all looking at each other like, well, you'll if you will go out and talk to strangers for us, that'd be great. And I said, sure, yes, what you're doing is remarkable. I'll do that.
Dan, we've got another question in the room here, Suzanne.
Okay.
So Dan, as Bob was just asking, can you reach out to public groups and groups that are interested in this information? What about reaching outside of other states? Because I'm thinking of a whole strike of folks who deal with school kids on the East Coast with what you're offering, being able to tell them, hey, here's what's happening to the wildlife on fire happens.
So Dan, were you able to hear that question?
Yes, she was asking if we've done outreach to schools on the East Coast.
Or just like other states, like outside of Colorado, how is your outreach aspect within collabs?
So
penetrate out in the state?
If a school wanted to reach out to you and say, hey, can you help us understand by providing a speaker by a Zoom, we could address what happens to the animals that are involved in a wildfire. School kids wanted to know, hey, what's going on with saving deer?
So we don't reach outside Colorado. Our mission really is to nurture the network that's here, notwithstanding the labs being a national asset or funded from national taxes. The focus for us is to, in essence, get the word out here in Colorado. And these type of gatherings that I continue to do, that of course used to be in person, would often connect me with someone who was from a local school district or an individual teacher who would then follow up with a request. And I have actually, there's right now probably 5 different rolling connections with a few different teachers across different Front Range school systems, where I've had requests just in the last couple of weeks regarding earthquake and volcano research, around wildfire research. Quantum computing, of course, is big. And then even renewable energy, that's a big one. So it's been a bit of a back and forth in places where I get to go speak like this. People will learn of me and inquiries come, and other ways people hear through the grapevine almost. Hey, there's this group collabs, they can help you as a teacher make those connections with a specific researcher. And boy, helping make those connections so the teachers have a quote live scientist coming into the classroom, and now it's via Zoom. That's very rewarding. And if there is a particular topic or teacher that you'd like to be connected with the labs, then please connect with me. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
So Dan, we're out of time, but you put up your contact information, so I guarantee you're going to get some emails, whether you want to or not. But as a token of our appreciation, when we next see you, we got you the whole world.
Hey, all right.
It's great paperweight, but also if you have some unruly graduate students coming to you, you can throw it their direction and see if they'll catch it. But yeah, we really appreciate you coming and educating us on collabs and the history of collabs, and also the network that has been built. I think that's super beneficial for us to know about in Boulder and the outlying area. We have a great network of scientists that come and speak to us, and we'll definitely bring you up in conversation as we meet them and learn about their work as well. So
okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. We're lucky. We're lucky where we are. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. So with that, we are up for time for today. So very much appreciate you all coming in, and hopefully I will see you all next week. This was the first of Bill's environmental program month. We're trying a themed month. So last week we had a different program, but every program through the rest of this month, and I think the first one in November, is an environmental theme. So coming into science and science as it pertains to the environment, and the other end of it as well as people working on the environment. So thank you so much. And as always, if it's Wednesday, it's Rotary.
Thanks for the donut.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate it so much.
Sorry.